Monotony. It comes in all shapes and sizes. Dull, tedious, just plain boring. But what is this? A contender, perhaps? Something unboring by the looks of it. Jabs right at dull, an uppercut to tedium, something that keeps you on your toes, keeps your head on a swivel, a knockout punch to your old, boring workouts. Welcome to Fight Camp.
Welcome to Turnbuckles and Spilt Liquor Podcast. I'm your host, Lito, with my co-host, Sinista1. Got our guys on here from Barry the Booking Podcast with us, Dev and Dale. What's up with y'all today?
How are you?
Dream.
Yes, sir.
And we got a special one tonight, y'all. You know what I'm saying? We got to bring this in correctly. We got to bring this in right. My man Sinister is going to go ahead and introduce our guest tonight.
Look. I want to introduce him tonight and just do this right. You know, being ringing out. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Turnbuckles and Spilt Liquor Podcast season premiere 2026. Tonight is a special one. When you talk about the golden era of professional wrestling, there are certain names that define what is meant to be a star, that brings intensity, credibility, toughness, and presence. And one of those names is Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. Paul Orndorff wasn't just a great wrestler, he was a measuring stick. He stood toe-to-toe with legends, helped shape wrestling's biggest boom period, and brought realism and physicality that made everything feel important, whether it was work in the ring, his look, or the respect he commanded from his peers and fans alike. Mr. Wonderful made you believe. His Hall of Fame legacy isn't just about moments and matches, it's about impact, about helping define what a professional wrestler is supposed to be. Tonight, we have the special privilege of speaking with someone who knew Paul Orndorff not as just a character, but as a father, a man, and a human being. We are honored to welcome the son of Mr. Wonderful himself, Travis Orndorff. Let's get into it, baby.
What's up, Travis?
2026, bro.
Bro, I thought you were gonna have some entrance music or something. I was waiting. Let me get my Spotify out real quick. I got that Mr. Wonderful entrance music. We can do Real American. That'll be. So no, thank you. We had to reschedule, right? And
yes, sir.
Things happen, but I'm grateful to be here. Grateful to share the legacy of my father. Not and you said it best. It's not just the character, which was really forged throughout his childhood, but it was the man that he became and the father that he was. Which that intensity he brought to the ring. It played out in his personal life in many ways. So I'm grateful to be here. I also, it's funny because when people start talking about my dad and then you pan to me and they're like, he's a little smaller than I expected. I thought he'd have hair or something, you know.
Yeah.
And so I always say, you know, I'm a chip off the old block. He's the block, and I'm a chip.
Well, listen, man, we are very, very excited and happy that you came and
Thank you,
you
thank you.
decided to join us tonight, man. This is gonna be great, man. We got a lot of questions for you. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna try to squeeze what we can squeeze in within the hour. You're
Well, let's
gonna
do
be
it.
being with us, bro. So I guess like how I want to start off like growing up for you, right? When did it first really sink in for you that your dad just wasn't your dad? He was Mr. Wonderful to millions of fans and people around the world.
I don't remember a time I didn't know it, you know, and so I was born in 78, so I'm 47. Now my brother is 10 years older. So he grew up in the territory days where, you know, and granted, I lived in like 8 places before we settled in Georgia, but I don't remember any of it.
Mm-hmm.
I've jokingly said this, but it's not completely inaccurate. Like I knew what kayfabe meant from day one, you know, because we would go places. And you guys are from all over Boston and Philly. Like I traveled with my dad during those days, and you know he was a heel. He was, you know, there were death threats. I remember one time, and I never can remember if it was Boston or Philadelphia, but we would leave the stadium in an ambulance, and they would sneak us out of the arena area and take us to a car that was you know, somewhere else because it wasn't safe to do that. And the residents were tipped off, and like he's putting me in the floorboard of a car while they try to push the car over. So, you know, even at a very, very like just remembering he when he wasn't there and I was in school, there was this understanding because everywhere we went, he was known. You know, we couldn't go anywhere. And so when he was home, which was very select, you know, we would go somewhere and, you know, we'd be in a line for people to, you know, sign autographs.
Mm-hmm.
So it really was always part of my life. And I want to say it this way. Um, my last name is Orndorff. It's not like I can just disappear into a crowd if you hear my name.
Right.
Like you know, for example, I'm friends with the Big Boss Man's daughter, you know, or Lacey Trailer, and they didn't know Ray Trailer's name for years, so she could escape it. But Orndorff,
Yeah.
like to this day, you know, even like from the beginning, you know, if I go somewhere, I say Orndorff, I get one of two looks. As a child, it was always like Paul Orndorff, and then as I got older and he wasn't as famous. I didn't know how to like adapt because then it was just like, how do I pronounce that? Not,
Mm-hmm.
you know, completely resonating with his character. So you know, if I was Georgia Smith, British Bulldog starter, your last name's Smith.
Right.
Nobody's going to know unless you bring it up. And so it was not something that I could escape. You know, it was on the back of my uniform when I played T-ball. And then, you know, when I was in karate or whatever sport, you know, people kind of gunned for you because they knew who your dad was. So it was always, it's part of my DNA. I don't know it to be any other way.
Did you ever think about getting in wrestling at all, or no?
Absolutely not. Not even for a moment. Now, what I'll tell you is, you know, and I'm like 185, 190 right now, right? But I didn't have the size he had. And I was at a very young age, right when my dad retired, which was in 88. That year I got deathly ill and they didn't think I was going to live. And so, you know, I went from like 83 pounds to 52 pounds, dad sleeping in a cot or, you know, on a like a pull-up bed in my hospital room. And, we didn't know if I was going to make it. So for the next 2 years, like life was really, really difficult. And so as I was getting older, I mean, I graduated, I was 135 pounds from high school.
Mm.
So there was a size thing there, but even before that, I did acting. You know, in fact, you know, in middle school, I was friends with and acted with Kenan Thompson before he went on to Nickelodeon. So there was that side of me. But even then, Dad was like, "You can't do that until you're 18 or 19." And he said 18, but you know, I went out to LA when I was 19, and there was an understanding from a very early age, because I heard that question all the time, that uh, dad was like, you don't want this life. Like I had no other way of providing for my family. This is part of who I am, but he's like, life on the road sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, there was three channels on the TV, and people are like, man, you went to the gym so much. I'm like, there wasn't anything else to do, right? Like, and he didn't drink a lot of alcohol and he didn't party like, I mean, I'm not saying he never did, but
Yeah.
that wasn't a night to night thing like like other people, where he was really he took care of his body. So there was never a time where I could have physically done it, number one, but it was ingrained in me from day one. This is not the life you want. And he became a born again Christian in 1985. And
Okay.
so there was this switch that flipped where, he went from selling out, Madison Square Garden to preaching and giving his testimony at church. So you take the lifestyle that I obviously found out and got stories about later. So when he was telling about the life on the road and things, like, he was talking about all of it, the women, the drugs, the alcohol. And so, in fact, at the Hall of Fame, and when he was inducted, we were at the bar, and one of the guys, was like, dude, you're pretty funny. Like, you should write, you should come on the creative team. And my dad just, he had his own language, but he just kind of looked at me and went, and that was like shut down.
Yeah.
And
like,
and it was the same conversation. Pat Patterson came over and sat with us at the table, and Pat's talking to me, and I don't know Pat. And, of course, after that, Dad's like, no, like, you just stay away from it. And, I found out why. But, you think about all the things that have come out about Vince in the last, 3-5 years. And,
Yeah.
and my dad was telling me, I know what's going, maybe not to that extent, but I know what's going on. And this is not something you want in your life. So by the time I went to LA at 19 and had opportunities, like, I got there and I was there for a couple of weeks, and I called my dad. I was like, I'm going to die. I need to, like, I have been partying every day. I'm not going to survive. I need to come home. And so that was never really part of who I was, in the sense that defined me. And, even how my dad got into it, he was, had played college football, played a very short career in the pros. He was selling insurance. And my grandfather worked for my grandfather at MetLife, and my grandfather, my mom's dad. And it was a Saturday morning. My grandfather was going to fire him like on Monday. And he looks at the TV and wrestling's on. He goes, I can do that. And my grandfather set him up with Hiro Matsuda and got him into wrestling. So, it was pure accident. Like, it was my grandfather that had nothing to do with it, except that he was well connected down in Tampa. And so that's how my dad ended up in wrestling. And that, you got to know, I can remember times where he would fly in on a Thursday, and he would come get me at like midnight, bring me in. I'd sleep in his bed. We'd wake up Friday morning. He'd ask about my homework. And then he would take me out of school that day, and I'd go to the gym with him. So, like, I spent time with my dad when he was available. And then you move forward to that was the territories. And then, I mean, I've opened up Christmas presents in an airport, and like in the truck, Santa came through the exhaust pipe, and the presents were in the trunk, right? That wasn't uncommon. So when you think about his priorities as a family, and he did what he did to take care of his family, like, I wouldn't wish that lifestyle. It's different now, but back then it was genuinely 300 plus days a year. I would take 2 weeks off of school multiple times and just go travel with him on the road, in the dressing rooms, just me and him. That's how I got to spend time with him. So never wrestling, because, I look at it now and the injuries he had, and, the things that he went through, like, I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
Mm-hmm. What's your, cause he was a part of many eras. What's your favorite era that your dad was a part of? I know he was with Roddy Piper in 85?
So it was 83 is when it started.
Okay.
And he joined, wasn't it? He World Wrestling Federation 1983. He was in it from 83 to 88.
Correct.
And he got linked with Roddy. And correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Piper give him the nickname Mr. Wonderful?
So a couple things. Number one is you will probably know more about his career than I will, not because, like, it's just too much information.
Yeah.
This is gonna, like, I was a fan of my father, not a Mr. Wonderful, and those things were separated. So I didn't watch his matches growing up because I used to get upset if I thought he got hurt. So I didn't watch a lot of that. I didn't watch his promos and things that you guys all know about until YouTube came out, and I started watching his promos with him. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, well, no wonder people hated me and you. Like, now I see it. But like, in fact, I was telling somebody the other day about a story. A friend of mine, that his name was Sammy, and I grew up with him in Fayetteville. And he, from the time I was like 7, would not talk to me. And we're at a bar one night when I'm 22 years old. And he comes over and he's apologizing for like being mean to me. And I'm like, yeah, I always wondered what did I do? He goes, your dad turned on Hogan. I'm like, bro, you gotta be kidding me. And like that's real, right? Like, people hated his guts. We had
That's like 86, wasn't it?
Oh, well, we had death threats. Like, our, people don't remember the day and time where like our number, our address was unlisted. In fact, one time they put our name and phone number and information into a church bulletin or whatever, like the one that, like, for the year, and he made them recall it because they didn't want anybody having our information. We changed our number so often that, like, I would have to like write it down because I didn't know which one we had. But he went to when he went from, I think it was from Georgia Championship Wrestling to New York. Like, that was still a territory. That wasn't the WWF from WrestleMania. Like, they still were, now Vince shared his vision, but Vince Sr. actually tried to get Dad to come up before then, and Dad wouldn't go because, one, we didn't want to move to Connecticut. And two, because he didn't think he was ready yet. At that point, he started in 76. So at that point, it had been like 5 years, which in those days was a drop in the bucket before you went to a major territory. When he went to the WWF, and I still have this robe, he was wearing, and there's a picture of him and Roddy in 83. He still wore the robe that was black with like a silver buckle, and it said Orndorff on the back. He didn't get that Mr. Wonderful robe till WrestleMania 1, 2 years later, really about a year and a half later. But the Piper called him Mr. Wonderful on Piper's Pit, and that's where they brought up the name. But the truth is, the Samoans, Afa and Sika, are the one that came up with it. They and so Dad, Paul Orndorff, he always went by his full name, which was great. Let me make sure I layer enough sarcasm on that. But he had PO on his trunks, and then when he was in Mid-South, it changed to OP. And JYD used to say, he did it kind of jokingly. He said it shouldn't be PO, it should be OP because you wrestle like an outpatient. You're so crazy. And so when he got to WWF, Piper, who in my opinion is still the best talker of all time, and there's no comparison. Macho Man had his style and it was good, but Piper was hilarious and just could draw the anger out of you, whether you had it or not. But that's how he was introduced, was as Mr. Wonderful, and then that played into, and obviously became the robes. And my mom actually came up with the Mr. Wonderful with the hashtag, because my father invented the hashtag, if you didn't know. But back then it was the pound sign. But Mr. Wonderful, on his tights. And so all of that integrated, and it really did reflect his character, in the sense that, like, he wasn't as arrogant. And those, he got better at promos. Roddy taught him how to talk, because he wasn't great in front of a mic when he got up there. And he used to do a lot of his promos, like with his back to the camera, and people thought it was his arrogance. And I'm like, no, he was an introvert. Like, that wasn't comfortable for him yet. And then you can see in the early 90s, like, he's great on the mic, but that was a developing talent. He always used his body. But yeah, it was, Mr. Wonderful was truly, like, I always said, as a heel and even as a wrestler, he got to exercise those like inner demons and get that out, because his intensity in the ring, in the gym, throwing baseball with me in the yard, like, it never changed. And I didn't get much from him, but I inherited that.
Yeah, that intensity shows. Like one of my favorite matches was it Cactus Jack, Dustin Rhodes, Sting versus Barry Windham,
Wyndham.
Wyndham, Vader, and your dad.
Right.
Battle Bowl.
Yeah.
Battle Bowl.
That was
Dad
wild.
could run circles around all of them. And I don't mean that like in an arrogant way. I mean,
I get you.
His motor, every wrestler that I've ever heard wrestle with, number one, he would treated, what people, enhancement talent. He gave them the opportunity to have a good match. It wasn't always just like he put them over too. He always had a respect for the business. I never knew some of these guys were not major players in wrestling because I hung out in the dressing room and he treated them no different than he treated anybody else with a level of respect. But Hogan, went on record and said, like, Paul Orndorff got the best out of me because when you got in the ring, you had no choice but to go to war with him or he was going to drag you down through it. And Hogan said he always brought the best out of me because you didn't get to take a night off. And I think that's what, like, everybody talks about the intensity and I can tell you that's part of my DNA. Like people are like, man, you make coffee nervous. And I'm like, that's not inaccurate, but he was just that he was wired that way. He was wound tight. And I'll tell you this is how this even came to be. He was working for Bill Watts and he was a mid card and Dad was trying to find his way in wrestling. Right. And Bill looked at him and said, if you don't show me something tonight, you're not wrestling next week. And then he didn't have a job. And I think Dad was shy. I think he was, he was not yet controlled chaos. And he went in that ring and they went for 30 minutes. And when he walked out, everybody said that's the best match we've seen in years. And that at that point, he found his identity because the Mr. Wonderful stuff, that's just a play on his character. But his running to the ring and being amped up, that is how he approached mowing the lawn was intense.
Now, were you at or were you in the locker room at WrestleMania 1?
Not at WrestleMania 1. And based on the stories I heard, there might have been a couple reasons that I shouldn't have been there. Did I make that? Okay, good. Make sure everybody's paying attention. Gotta wake you guys up.
And how?
Yeah. And scene. No, in fact, I think Mr. T's daughter did a play on it and told a joke about it. And what was funny to me is I know that didn't happen and she wasn't there, but I'm like, well, that's not too far from being accurate. Like it's an exaggeration of what was, look. And I'll just be honest with you. I remember like in my 20s, my dad and I had a conversation about cocaine and, he was like, man, it's not as good as it used to be. And I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean it used to be good? Like, and that was the 80s, right? Like,
that's what they say. Yeah, they
it
say
wasn't like completely illegal yet. But, like I was in the dressing room on the road with him during normal, like, tours because we would, fly out of Atlanta, go into, Boston, Philadelphia, Connecticut, the tri-state area. We would get there and we would get on a bus and we would go from town to town. And, on a side note was, people always ask me like, what was it like being around Big John Studd and Andre the Giant? I'm like, it was disgusting. They were naked and sweaty. And that was not in any way my heroes when I didn't see them in their tights. Like I didn't see them out in the ring performing. I literally saw everything you would never want. Like, I think that's why I don't remember my childhood. I think I actually blocked it out.
You said to get rid of it.
You don't want to see that, right? Yeah. And so, like, the reality of my time, I remember we watched, I think we went to the Omni and watched it, back then, that was the first pay-per-view, as we know it. It was closed circuit television. Now that's like a security camera, but like we would go to an event and we would watch it on a big screen and then, we would leave. But, those times, like I never sat in the ring. I didn't sit out in a arena and watch a match until I was 22 and or maybe 23, and I got tickets and took friends to work. And I was like, oh, this is what it's like, you know. And now I'll go every once in a while. I took my kids a couple years ago. I took a couple other guys and my girlfriend last year. I even wore my dad's blue robe, you know, and you know, I just walk in. Everybody's already dressed up anyway, and but it's not like I had a sign up that said, "This is real. I'm Paul Orndorff's son."
Right.
I just walked around in it, and then people would come up to me like, "This looks so real," and I'm like, "It is." And they're like, "Well, where'd you get it from?" And I'm like, "I inherited it." And then they're like, you know, their mind blows out. Now we're taking photos, but there were tons of people walking past me had no clue why I was it, but I would hear in the background Paul Orndorff, and I'm like, "This is the best part is when you can do it kind of incognito."
That's right. So how many robes do you have?
4.
You got 4.
So I
You
have
have to show one of them, bro.
bear with me.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
We gotta see that, yo. I'm sorry.
Oh my goodness.
I gotta see that, yo. That's a piece of wrestling history right there. Like for sure. It's crazy.
All right, so this is the Orndorff, and like this is like old school 70s. Big collar. Why is this not? Let me go.
That's because
there.
you're.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is like the 70s Orndorff,
Yeah.
and then look out, Eleanor. And then this one is the black one I was telling you about.
Oh
That is
yeah.
like his first one from.
At some point, yeah.
I don't know what I'm
And
doing.
the
Hold on, let me change the
background is killing it.
Yeah, let me kill that. Sorry, guys.
No, you
No,
good.
no problem.
I know.
Yeah.
No problem.
No,
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
There
Yeah,
it
that's clean.
is. Oh,
That's clean.
So
Right?
this
Oh,
is
man.
this is the original one, like that he started wearing when he went to WWF, and these are all made by Olivia.
Okay.
So Olivia was Mr. Wrestling 2's wife. She made like she should be in the Hall of Fame more than anybody. This is the Mr. Wonderful from this. He wore this one in WrestleMania 2.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Oof.
And
Oh
then
gosh.
this is the Mr. Wonderful gold and black that he wore
Yeah.
in WCW.
Yeah.
You got the red one?
I don't. I have never been able to find that one.
So has
The red one was
has-
my favorite.
Has
So-
WWE contacted you to, because you know they got that show where they've been looking for like history to hang up in inside of their Hall of Fame area for fans to come by and take pictures with and look at? Have they contacted you about that at all?
What kind of sort of, and what I'll say about that is one of the things that happens when you are in wrestling, and it's the, you know, it's kind of the story that I really want people to know is you know, to a wrestling fan, because I mean I've been to events where you know, I remember one time I was at an event and Diamond Dallas Page was signing autographs, and this is like an independent show in Canton, Georgia, that I had gotten invited to, and I'm standing on the side by his wife, and I'm watching this line, and it's, I mean, it's long, like it's wrapped in the building, and I saw this girl, and I looked at Paige. I said, I have never been that happy about anything ever. I mean, there's and it's hard to describe because I even went to Abdullah the Butcher's birthday party this past weekend, and like I'm there, and there's like, you know, there's a few people, you know, I can't help but see it through the eyes of a wrestler, because I know what the promoters go through that bring them. I know whether or not they get paid. I've been there when my dad had to confront somebody about not paying him for doing something. And so I have this, you know, there's a lot of shadiness inside of in that world, and people will do anything they can to get close to it. But the downside to a lot of what happens inside of wrestling is, you got to remember, my dad, you know, he went to college, but I've never heard him tell a story about, you know, a class he was in, right? You know, and so my dad grew up in a very rough part of Tampa. You know, it was, you know, in a trailer. You know, his dad was a butcher. You know, you know, it's that story of like shared shoes, you know, passed down. alcoholism, abuse, all those things. Like the fact that my father loved me the way he did doesn't make sense because he didn't come from an environment that was safe, yet he created safety for me, right? And so there were generational curses he overcame, but there were generational curses I had to overcome too, right? Because that plays in. So what has happened to a lot of his stuff as it does with wrestlers is a lot of it went missing. It's very honest. I never want to speak poorly of anybody. I don't think that's my place. I'm certainly not judgmental like I once was, but my brother was 10 years younger or is 10 years younger than me. Like my mom was 18 and my dad was 18 and my mom was 17 when he was born. 10 years later, my parents are 27, 26. We may have had the same parents, but we did not have the same childhood. And, my brother didn't get the same benefits that I received. I went to private school and, even as a kid, that my parents wanted me to stay in a diverse environment. So we lived in this small kind of country town in Fayetteville, but I went to school in College Park and in Riverdale, which, is famous now, but it wasn't back then. And, I remember my first teacher was, Native American. And I don't mean like, what's her name? Elizabeth Warren. I mean, like legit 100% lived on a reservation. And so like, there were things that were afforded to me, but don't ever discredit the fact that nobody went to Harvard and then became a wrestler like they do now, or leaves wrestling to become an attorney. Like, it's a different type of person. That was a circus attraction. There was no, the fame that we know from WWE that didn't exist back then.
Right. You watch wrestling today?
I don't. But what I do is I keep in touch with it through social media. The amount of shows that they have and the number of matches that they have, like that's a full-blown addiction to keep up with that stuff. Like I have hobbies I don't have that much time for, right? Like
it's insanity.
So I'll keep up with it on social media. I know the players, and I kind of know the outcomes, and I'll watch the clips of things. And here's what I'll tell you. I went to a show this past January, so a year ago, and I always watched matches with my dad as a kid. And back then, the motto was, you are wrestling for the person that's the farthest away from you. Now you wrestle very small. Even back then they were 18 by 18 rings in the 70s. Now they're 20 by 20. But when you watch wrestling now, there's a camera there. So it's not the way they do a punch. It's not as exaggerated. It's not as big. It's not even as loud. I mean, I was watching those matches. I'm like, I think I can hear myself think. Like, it's not like you were at wrestling events when I was a kid, man, you couldn't, I'd just be in the hallway and it was eruption, right? And so it was just a different day and time. So as I'm watching this, I remember I looked at my girlfriend and I was like, yeah, he just missed a spot. And it was like they were doing something, and I mean, it was going to be like landing on a chair, and I mean, like he was 1.5 feet off. Now, from the camera angle, it was okay, but from like the close up, you knew it didn't connect. So I totally think, our parents said this to us. Your music isn't as good as our music. So is wrestling better? It's different, right? They're playing to a different audience. But I'll tell you this. I'm in Atlanta and I'm seeing 18 to 65-year-old people chanting the same chant for a wrestler. And I think it was Yeet, right? Like the Uso, and it's like you can see people of every background. It really is like it just, everybody can come together for wrestling and love it. Nobody, it's not like politics.
Yeah.
It's, where everybody's at each other's throat. Like everybody hated Logan Paul, right? There wasn't one person cheering for him. And by the way, in just my opinion of what I have seen, he is the only real heel I've seen in wrestling and, since the 2000s. But
Does he
you know,
remind you of your dad at all? Like the way he
gosh,
is?
no. No. Like that's so wrestling has always been scripted,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't write my dad's promos back then. Like if you watch him, like Roddy Piper, he did that off the top of his head. They were impromptu all day long. They weren't, practicing a match before they went out and wrestled it. That was like you just did it. And they would build matches in the show and they would play to the crowd and the audience. And so it's a completely different product, but I'd never want to degrade what somebody today thoroughly loves and enjoys. Because they go back and watch the older stuff and they're like, man, it took forever. And what are they doing with the arm drag? And so they don't enjoy it. But, I'm the kind of person that I love, I love Otis Redding and I like Chris Stapleton. I can cross every era and generation and decade of music. If it's good music, it's good music. If people enjoy wrestling, it's just as good to them as it was to you. It's the emotional connection to it that matters. If you were 6 years old and you're in the front row now or back then, there is no difference. Zero.
Yeah. When your dad's finishing move was the pile driver. They banned that move for a long time.
Here's what I'll say about my dad doing that. Number one, there was like every day was leg day. If he invited you to the gym, like you would pray to God for constipation because you did not want to have to sit down after doing leg day you crawl out. I've never been hit rock bottom other than when I did calves and legs with my father, and I'm like, let me die right now, here and there, right? So when he wrestled, he was always sober, 100%. When he wrestled, he had he was a legit strong man. He knew his body. He knew how to control it. He never hurt anybody. He knew how to properly execute it. Even I was watching a video of something the other day, and they're on concrete, and he didn't jump up like he normally does, like that leaping pile driver, right? But he sustained a lot of injuries over the years. Hogan, people, Hogan or Flair, both, they complain, oh, there's such boring matches. Yeah, but it gave them longevity. They didn't have near the number of surgeries and neck surgeries and all the things that my dad went through. But that pile driver, he kept it safe. But he was strong enough. And you can watch it because everybody's like, oh, Jerry Lawler. I'm like, that's a joke. Like, not to say that his was bad, but my dad would turn to find the camera angle and turn sideways and then jump off the ground. And he was 250, and he's got a guy that's 250. I mean, that's 1,000 pounds. He's getting off the ground. And Hulk Hogan, and he did it. So he was able to do it because he knew his body. I'm not a dumb man. I'm pretty smart, but I don't think I've ever known anything as well as he understood and knew his body.
Word.
That's how he ended up in the Hall of Fame. He was good at what he did.
Yeah, I mean, he took pride in it, and I never saw him take a night off. Like there was always that element of intensity that he brought. And for him, I remember we did a show. He and I did. It was he was giving his testimony at this church, and I think I was 13 years old, and he was wrestling like the wrestling coaches in this, like all the high schools, and he was going through one. Like the end of it was, that I had to wrestle him because he was mad at me for making fun of him, and they don't know that I'm his kid at that time. And like, I remember being in the ring with him, and like he's just playing around and grabbed me by the hair when I had it and throwing me across the ring and, all that stuff. But it's like there was this element of exaggeration that still felt like I knew it didn't hurt that bad. I felt it, but it didn't hurt that bad. But the way he was shaking me, you would have thought he was ripping my hair. Well, maybe he did. I didn't think maybe that's no. But yeah, there was an element to his body of work. And I think this played out because I got to spend time with wrestlers that tell me all these stories. He respected the fans. And I think back to and I'm not comparing him, but like Michael Jordan never took a night off.
Right.
Because he knew you paid good money to come watch him play basketball. And while Michael Jordan is not the epitome of the greatest man ever, he respected what he did enough that he knew why he was there. And I've seen Dad wrestle in front of high school kids, and I've seen Dad wrestle in, a major stadium. It's not like he brought a different game that night.
It remained the same.
It remained because he did everything the same way. I can remember him telling me as a kid, like, you don't do anything halfway. He didn't say way, but you don't, if you're going to do it, you do it. Yeah.
Yep.
If you're doing it, you're doing it. There is no in between.
Yeah.
And I've told people when people ask me, like, man, you just go. And I'm like, I was raised one more rep, period. Now, you work out with him, he'd say 6 reps, and one more rep meant 12, 13, and you can't move the next day. But it's just part of my DNA, and it was part of his. When you're doing something, you do it out of respect for yourself, not just for everybody else.
So Piper was your guy. Then do you remember much about Flair or Hogan or?
Well, yes, and what I would say about that is from the 80s. Now, granted, I grew up in it. I was 9 when he left it, and we were still involved. And I took him to shows, and I know the boys. But like, if I go up to somebody that's a wrestler, this happened the other day with Tony Atlas, and I walked up to him and I said, Tony, he doesn't know me. He doesn't remember me from when I was a kid, right?
Yeah.
And so then he did what he was doing. I didn't interrupt. But it's like they have that identity of you're a fan. And they, all wrestlers, almost all of them are this way. And then I said, Tony, it's Travis Orndorff. And he popped up and hugged me, right? Like it then hits. But I get the same treatment as you do until they know who I am. But the guy that I spent the most of the time with as a kid was JYD. Because him and Dad were tight. They had wrestled together in Louisiana, and they didn't wrestle each other when they were at WWF. He did a couple times, but the tours I would go on. So like Dad would go wrestle, and I would sit with JYD, and we'd play cards, And so my favorite wrestlers are the ones that treated me like I was a human. They weren't for any other reason than I felt like I was a person to them. And they used to have me go. He hated getting goosed, pitching him on the butt. And they would have me sneak over, and he hated it, but he let me get away with it. But it was so big, it was hilarious. And Bobby Heenan, we traveled with him, he's hilarious. And in fact, one time somebody said, are you going to follow in your dad's footsteps? And Bobby says, nah, he can read. Like that's and I got to talk stories with him at the Hall of Fame, and these guys, they're very, very human, but they have like a lens of kayfabe. And I think with Flair and Hogan to that point, and I don't mean this I'm not degrading anybody. If you played the same character in a play for 50 years, you would lose your sense of identity. You'd forget where you came from and who you were. My dad loved to hunt. He, he loved to go to the gym. Like his identity wasn't Mr. Wonderful. It was a persona. And I saw when the camera would go on, it's like boom, he would be talking trash. And I remember one time he got done, I was like, Dad, you love Terry, Hulk Hogan. He's like, yeah, of course I do. I'm like, then what was that? Because to me, that was a documentary style. You're going to be your real self. No, you play the gimmick. So that was part of them. But there were times where I would look at him and go, yo, you're not Mr. Wonderful right now. Just chill out, right? And I got away with it without getting demolished. But when I look at Flair, and I got to spend time with him and Terry and in college and run into them, there was an essence of they were the character. He actually changed his name to Hulk Hogan. And his kids have Hogan as a last name legally. That's an element of kayfabe that I don't think people fully get. They became that thing. And they played, they would go everywhere. And if they were a heel, they treated people bad because they had to stay in character. And that was carried over from the territory days. Now nobody would want to be a heel now because they can't handle not getting likes. They want the attention so much, and on so they play it up on social media to have these beefs, but that's kayfabe, right? Like it all is.
For sure. Yep.
But when you're around somebody like Flair, and again, this is me just saying what I experienced. Like, you don't have to do woo anymore. Like, it's okay. Like you know what I'm saying? Like, you have the drunken cameo. I'm like, you're still playing somebody that you don't remember who you are. And that's for me sad, right? Like,
I still need to woo though.
Woo!
you can still. I mean, I'm not saying don't do it, but you don't have to do it all the time,
Styling and
right?
profiling.
Yeah. How was your dad's transition like after he retired? Like like just from like you said he never lost, his identity.
No, not at all. Like, when he
terms of,
retired in
being the
'88,
person.
the first time, because he had the neck injury, and
Right.
the surgeries back then were barbaric. I mean,
Right.
people forget, like, the only drug we had back then was Thorazine. Like, it wasn't the same. And we owned a bowling center, and we lived in a small town. And I mean, honestly, like, we had a bowl. We'd go up to the bowling alley, and he'd come to my baseball games. Now, granted, he would come to my baseball games. He'd bring like a chair from the patio and put it in the back of his truck, and he'd be out there shirtless tanning during the summertime. So he didn't completely quit, being something like taking care of his body and all those things. And he still went to the tanning bed, and like that, he still fixed his hair every night. Paul Mitchell, Awapui shampoo and hairspray. Like, that was always him. And Paul Sebastian cologne. But he was fine. He wanted to be home. Like, we went to church. He took me to school. It was a normal. Honestly, it was like a normal life. He'd grab his four-wheeler and he'd go down to the woods. And so he only went back to wrestling because actually, when we lost the bowling center, it was because of a Ponzi scheme. The guy that was doing the advising embezzled a bunch of money from everybody, and my dad ended up having to sell the bowling center and file bankruptcy. And he did the only thing he could do. He went back to wrestling, even with a bad right arm. And then, with Turner, things changed because he became an employee. He had health insurance. So in '95, he had the surgery, and then so he was at my high school graduation with a neck brace on, and he went back as an agent. And so you asked me what my favorite era was, and I apologize that I didn't answer the question. My favorite was when he was the trainer at the power plant, because he got the best of both worlds. One, he was a great teacher. I mean, he really was. You had to be able to keep up, right? Like, because even back then he was doing ab straps, and he was doing 500 reps knee ups, and then left and right, like nonstop, right? And so, like, that period of time, he got to be at home, but he also got to be a wrestler. And I think, Chuck Palumbo came by the house, and Rick Rude would come over, and I learned how to drive a 3-on-the-tree manual at Steve Austin's house. And so there was this element where he got to be around his people, but he also got to be with his family, and those two worlds meshed together, and I got to be a part of both of them. There was nothing more fun than to go to the power plant and see Dad do what he loved doing, but with the element of, like, carrying it forward.
That's dope. You know the names of anybody he was training, like, that kind of took off?
Oh, Sean Stasiak,
Okay.
Chuck Palumbo, Bill Goldberg went through there at one point. I mean, it was all the guys that, I think Sean Jindrak, is that Mark Jindrak?
Mark Jindrak? Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a whole group of guys. They were the natural born thrillers.
Thrillers. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Mike,
and so-
Mike Sanders.
So all those
guys.
guys were Dad's trainees, and there's a couple of them that got cut that stayed on the independent circuit for years. But, like, at this point, like, they're older than I am. So
Right.
It's been 2 decades since they've been on TV. But there was, I mean, Stacy Keebler got trained by him, and so it was all that kind of, like, early 2000 talent at WWF when WCW folded. Those were his boys. And Chuck Palumbo now, like, does, like, he fixes cars, and he tricks them out and stuff. But he fixed my dad in 1981 Jeep Land Cruiser. Toyota Land Cruiser. The 2-door with the I mean, it was red with a white top. and he came over and helped, fix the engine and stuff. So it was as crazy as it was so normal. Like it's kind of like me telling you the story about me never wearing a shirt. Like that's all I've ever known. I didn't know other people didn't do that. And then I saw them without their shirt and I'm like, oh, thank you, Jesus. Right. You're like, now I know why you didn't do that. Like I would not take my shirt off either if I looked like that.
So one of my favorite tag teams was Pretty Wonderful.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about Paul Roma. How was he?
Like my experience with him is he was really kind and strange, but he was kind. And when I say by that, he was kind of a little new age, and like he would come over and it'd be me and him sitting down on the couch, like talking, and he would tell me how he gets like power naps and how overcome the mind, and he would like count to 7 but sleep for 2 hours, but his brain would think he got 7, and like like I don't know how to explain that as well as it happened in that moment, but I remember just sitting there going, I don't believe you, like but like there I think Paul did a very good job. I think he gets a bad rap, but what I believe happens inside of wrestling, because it is a brotherhood, like it really is. Those guys went to war together. Like you're trusting somebody, nothing like the military, but you're trusting these guys with your life in some of these moves. Like they could really hurt you, right? And you spend all that time on the road with them and eat dinner and breakfast and all those. You're in the dressing room for 8 hours before your match. Like it's a world. But Paul, I think he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, and that'll make or break you in that business. It's not about being a politic. It's in my opinion, it's about being the best at what you do. And my dad said this to Arn Anderson, and Arn Anderson tells this story that before my dad left to go to WWF, he went to Arn and said, stay in the gym, take care of your body, learn how to talk, and work in the ring, and they can't deny you.
Mm-hmm.
And then just kind of another step to that was I remember being in the car with Steve Austin, and it was crazy because Steve actually, I didn't read this, but somebody told me he put it in his book, but I've seen it quoted. I'm like, I remember that day. And my dad looked at him, and he's at the end of his career, and Steve's kind of, at the beginning, and he goes, Steve, there's life after wrestling. There is a life after wrestling if you choose it. And, I see Steve with his cats, which I think all cats are going to hell, but that's just my personal opinion. I mean, there might be a few that get in, like Catholics that get into heaven, you know what I'm saying? But
no, they're horrible.
Yeah, dogs are going to heaven, I'm positive, at least mine. Sure. But there is this like balance between the world of wrestling and then being able to embrace your own humanity and reality. Because my favorite thing about my father, he was my dad. Like he wasn't Mr. Wonderful in a weird way until he passed. And I felt that I made him a promise on his deathbed, because he always wanted me to do social media. And I'm like, I don't want to do social media. I wasn't on it because I didn't want to deal with what came with it.
Yeah.
But in his passing, I made him a promise that I would become the man that he knew I could be, and that I would embrace this social media thing to celebrate his legacy. And we've done that. And the thing about my dad that was my favorite is the thing that I didn't know I would find. Growing up, I hated wrestling fans because everywhere we went, you took my daddy away. It was like, and all you wanted to talk about was my dad. And I'm like, I'm a human being too. It was hard to balance that world. And as I got older, I lost my identity as well. I was more Paul Orndorff's son than I was Travis. And Paul Orndorff's son could play the gimmick, but Travis was broken and didn't know what to do with life, right? As most of us experience. But my favorite thing about my dad was when I would take him to these wrestling events and Fanfest, and people come up and he's signing autographs, and I'm impatient, and now I'm the intense one, and he's all chilled out because he's in his 60s, and he would stop with every fan and just like everybody come out like, dude, your dad gave me the world that day, like because he saw you as a human being. It wasn't, they called women ring rats. I don't even like the term jobber, because I'm like, those guys made it on TV. What have you done with your life? Like, let's go, like, you know what I'm saying? But I think, seeing him with fans, I used to bother me. And then after he died, and like, if it wasn't for fans, I don't think I would be over the grieving. Because I thought I was going to bring Mr. Wonderful or tell you who my dad was, but I found out who Mr. Wonderful was to you. Like, that's what changed. And so now I have an appreciation for those people the same way my dad did, because many of them saved my life. Because that first year was rough, right?
Yeah.
So it really wrecked my world. And you know how Jonah was supposed to go to Nineveh and he wouldn't go, so he got swallowed up by a fish. Social media and wrestling fans are my Nineveh. I mean, I didn't want anything to do with them. And if not for them, I wouldn't be the man I am today. So wrestling fans are my favorite people.
Word. That's interesting, man.
I got a question, because there was something that his dad is remembered for in wrestling history for, is because, back then, he talked about, was the strict kayfabe code, keeping that code. And in the 80s, when they started that whole Saturday Night's Main Event, the big deal, it was all about promotion, making money, marketing. And one of the things that did happen in marketing where they broke kayfabe was Hulk
What
Hogan
is marketing?
selling.
I don't know what marketing is.
It's in Harvard Yard.
I'm sorry, I can't help myself. I could, yeah.
But
You did it twice, and I'm like, oh, I'm all in. I can't shut up now.
Your dad did a commercial, and he backed Hulk Hogan's workout kit that was advertised during Saturday Night's Main Event. And that was a big deal because, it kind of broke that kayfabe back then, because they were going through this battle in the WWF at that time. But they felt that Hogan's physique wasn't believable enough to sell the workout kit. And they said, Hogan was like, we got to give it to Paul. And Paul was all on board for it. And he sold it. It's a great commercial. It's like a commercial that shows up everywhere when you talk about the epitome of the 80s. And, your dad's in this commercial with this kid, and it's right along there with the cartoon, that.
Yeah, he does the like Kool-Aid man, like comes through the door. But I'll tell you two things out of that. Number one, and like my dad's body was, number one, he was so athletic with that side. Like, you should go back and see like the late 80s where he's doing like it, and he held multiple track records in the state of Florida for like broad jump, and I mean for decades, not for like just the 60s. He was great at anything athletic. He was a great baseball player. He was he's in the Hall of Fame in college football. He went to University of Tampa. Played with John Matuzak, who played Sloth and Goonies. Like, I have a signed football of Matuzak and Freddie Solomon, who played for the 49ers. Like, and there was a lot of talent, and he still was up there. So I mean, we hated eating food as kids because none of it tasted any good, right? Like, we didn't have cereal at my house. Like, we didn't have butter on the table. Like, we were allowed to have like pepper and hot sauce, which I love now, but as a child, it wasn't great. Every meal, we would go to like the Waffle House every once in a while, and he would take napkins, and he would, if they made too much butter on it, and he would like sop up the butter so that it was dry. I mean, like, food was horrible. He overcooked everything. It was miserable. But he was that committed to his body that that's how he was. Like, he would have tuna fish and like sardine cans on airplanes, and I mean, it would stink, but he's like, I'm not eating junk, right? And we didn't have junk in the house. So when you look at that period of time, there was a level of marketing and like, listen, as a bald man, it was not cool to be bald until like the late 90s, when people started shaving their heads, and Jordan shaved his head, and I think LeBron finally embraced it. I thought I saw that on the ESPN the other night. I'm like, thank you, Jesus.
He's just going real low. He should just chop it off.
That's it.
Anyway, just let it go.
Just know who you are. Know who you are. So,
right.
But like, if you think about it, like, Hulk Hogan was first of all, he was like he was marketed from the beginning. He had a bigger than life but he wore a bandana to hide his bald spot, right? Like,
Yep.
so that he was trying to hide it himself. You know, wore the do rags and ironic, by the way. But when you think back to that period, like he was a big guy, but go look at them posing down after like the
I got hair under here,
after
Travis.
WrestleMania 1, and my dad was shredded. And Bobby always told me that the reason Dad started to get kind of like after his feud with Hogan, which was like the most profitable run in show run in the history of WWF, greater than Randy Savage even, but it was evolving. But TV back then didn't. You watched like Saturday morning every couple of weeks, and you would catch wrestling. So it's not like you could change the title on a Friday and then the West Coast find out about it the next day or that night. So
Yeah.
changing belts, and they were establishing a brand. And Hulk Hogan was that all-American guy. This is during the Reagan administration. Like everything was USA and chanting USA, and the Sheik had the flag, and Volkov would sing the Russian anthem. Like there was all this element of like the Cold War existing. And Dad was getting to the point where when he came out, according to Bobby Heenan, the sound in the crowd was starting to be closer to 50-50. Like it wasn't all because people loved Dad's style and he was believable.
He sure was.
That cartoon or that marketing campaign was very much understanding which one would you rather look like, right? Like which one are you gonna? So it is ironic that he was the one that sold it and behind the hype machine, but the reality is Dad had a better body, and he was so committed to it. Like people are like, "Oh, I wish I wanted to be like your dad." I'm like, "You're falling in love with the reward."
Yeah.
He was in love with the process.
The work, yeah. Word. Coming up on an hour, man. I got one more question for you.
Go for it.
When the history of professional wrestling is written 50 years from now, what do you believe Paul Orndorff chapter should say about his impact on the business?
So I'm going to give you an answer you're probably not going to maybe fully understand, not because I don't think you can understand it, but I've tried to say it this way.
Mm-hmm.
When if you throw a rock in the pond, there's a big splash, right? And and then after that there's ripple effects, and then the rock goes under the water and you don't see what happens, but the reality is that body of water changes and things start to flow around it. So like if I look at other people's careers and legacies, like, and I look at Flair, Hogan, Steve Austin, all of them. Like, I know my dad played a part in all of that, but it's the people he impacted, either through his routine and his body, through his character, through his commitment, through his discipline, through his intensity. I'm not worried about how he's looked at as far as wrestling goes. I care about the people he impacted and the impact those people had on other people's lives. Because my dad, in spite of all the trash talking, always wore his cross. Like he knew his job, but it was his faith and his love that changed people's lives. I mean, I still get pictures every once in a while with somebody, and I brought up the story. I get a picture sent to me by this guy where he had written green marker down his arm to look like my dad's veins. This guy's jacked, right? Like he's totally like completely jacked now, right? But as a kid, I'm seeing this scrawny little brat, Asian kid with like green marks, and I'm like, my mom would have killed me if I did that. And his mom went and got him the green marker. I'm not worried about wrestling.
Yeah.
Because I know that man chose to eat different and took care of his body, loves his wife. Like, that's what I'm worried about. And when he passed, I think that's what I wanted people to know is you came to our sites because you loved Mr. Wonderful. But it was Paul Orndorff that did it. And there was things he was committed to. He was never shy about his faith in Jesus. He wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but he was humble, and he was willing to admit when he was wrong. I saw him soften. I saw him be tender. He loved my kids. I still love the fact that, like, when my kids were in the bathtub, they would play with my dad's toy, right? And they're like, instead of Mr. Wonderful coming off the rope, it's Pawpaw, right? Like, there would when I think about my own legacy, when he died and I faced my own mortality, and I'm like, how do I want the world to remember me? And I didn't like that answer at that point. So I had to make a lot of changes, and I had to commit to a lot of different things. And so for me, if he's never remembered in wrestling, I'm okay with that, because I know he touched people, and those people touched people. And through that action, that's a character and legacy that I think anybody would buy, would want. We might think we want the other, like we think we want the fame. I've seen what that does to people. I know how my dad treated his grandkids, and I know how he treated me, and I'll take that over wrestling any day.
So dope, man. Appreciate you, man, coming on tonight with us.
Yeah.
One last thing. I am a toy collector. How do you feel about the Piper's Pit that they came out with recently?
Oh, I did a video on it. So I love it. I felt like the detail, right? And so what I'll tell you real quick is, when he passed, my dad didn't have any type of visibility. There was no merchandise. There was no Legends contract, nothing. And so we started from scratch. I got a post. I got somebody messaged me on Instagram. His name's Tyler Elenick. He's one of those people out of Canada. One of the good things that came out of Canada, not much. But he's become my brother, and we do these posts in social media for the last 4 years, and we're going to pass like 100 million views. Never in my wildest, I remember thinking I'll never be able to do enough. And now I've done more than I could have ever imagined. And it was on what would have been my dad's 75th birthday that I got the call from WWE saying, hey, we love what you're doing, and we want to be a part of it. And that was a really, really cool moment, right? And so I never pursued all the things you see. And to be honest with you, like, people think you make, like, people are like, you're wrestling royalty. And I'm like, I have yet to see a royalty check, just so you know. But
which WWE should,
it doesn't, like, you got to know there's expenses that come in, estates and lawyers and all that stuff. But it's not nothing, but it's not something either, if that makes any sense. It's not life-changing. But I think what was so cool to me was when I was back then, when I called WWE to find out if there was even anything going on, and they were like, no, we want nothing to do with it. And I'm like, oh, well, I didn't expect that. Like, I thought I was going to, and so we started from scratch. So what you see in that Piper's Pit, it's something totally different for me, because that was a lot of hard work. And that was a commitment to a certain set of values in the way that we interacted with people. But when he came out in that video game, I mean, I bought a Nintendo Switch too, just so I could watch it at my house. The video game, and then the Mattel figures and the details with the WrestleMania t-shirt, like, that to me is just like, that's our childhood in a box. Right. And it's so iconic. And I think it's iconic for taking something that was, again, a circus attraction, and made it sports entertainment. That phrase didn't even exist, right? And I've always said it was just a male soap opera. If it had the Young and the Restless music at the beginning, I wouldn't be surprised, right? But that set went, and by the way, like, I have to buy it too. Like, it's not like they send me free stuff.
They should. Mattel should.
They're a corporation. I know everybody's gonna disagree with me on this. Like, I don't think we should expect anything. I don't expect, if I get it, great. If I don't, I got what I wanted out of it. It's, but when that came in, it was kind of, it's all like when he was out on the game, and then those moments of these little things coming out. It's like, it's almost like God and him are giving me a wink. Like,
I gotta find one, because they're sold out. Here.
Target is the only place I ever see them, and they come in and out of stock, but they're sold out. Like, I bought mine last October on pre-sale.
Okay, so you got ahead of the game.
And by the way, the only reason I find out is because somebody will send me a message And he had a Legends of Wrestling card, like the Cactus Jack edition, and like I bought it on eBay. Like, all the merchandise I have, most of it I bought, I got it throughout the years. So that for me was like that moment of, the fact that they did it together, and it was, I don't know, it just, it did mean a lot. And there's things I can't talk about, and some that I don't know about that are coming this year. And I think all of it brings me back to this place of gratitude, right? Like, like my dad, there's nothing more important to me than when somebody says, and they message me, I loved your dad. And they remember this moment when they were 7 or 12, and they're just expressing this joy that you can't fabricate. And I'm like, that's amazing. Like, I got to be a part of this in a different way, but seeing grown adults like sell out a toy that's 40 years old and recognizing how much my father meant to them for 4 decades and how it shaped them. Like, what else could you like in life? What else could you ask for? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what else do you want to accomplish? But when we got the Legends deal, that was that moment where I went, I knew my purpose before that, which my purpose is not wrestling. My purpose is to share my own story of recovery and faith.
For sure.
But it played out in a way that these moments like the toys are just like, that's really cool.
Word.
But the truth is, it's back in a box with all the other merchandise and stuff that I have. Eventually, I'll have it all on display. But at this moment, it's there's now it's a guitar besides the robe. So
that's what's up, man. Well, listen, thank you, Travis, for coming on with us tonight, man.
Thank you.
You got the floor, man. Let everybody know if you have social media or anything that you want people to know about you. You know what I mean? To tune in or to check out. You can
what I'd say is we have Paul Orndorff WWE is on X and Instagram and TikTok, and then we have Paul Orndorff Legacy page on Facebook, and we have a little around, and we have a YouTube channel with over 970 videos of Dad's promos and everything in between. And so there's all these places you can interact with me. I do all the comments and I do all the engagement on those posts, and it's just a reminder of a simpler time, right? It's meant to bring joy. We are intentional. Like, I can't. My other hobby is blocking people that say inappropriate stuff because I just don't have the tolerance for it. And I always tell people, like, if you're respectful, I'll be a baby face. If not, you need to know who raised me. My promo skills aren't bad, I assure you.
The finishing move is the block.
Yeah. That's because people get crazy. I'll tell you a quick one. I'm sorry if I'm going over, but this guy messaged and he put in the message, why did you post this stupid video? And I knew better than to respond, but every once in a while, I don't listen to Jesus and I just jump in. And I responded with, do not concern yourself with such matters. Go back to the basement and tell your mom I said hi. And this guy lost it. And I mean, and then he edited his post, and I had already screenshot it because I know people do stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
In case he tries to say. And I finally was like, man, I was willing to apologize, like, because I realized I might have gone too far, and people are sensitive. And I've gone through a lot. You're not going to hurt the one feeling I have left. But I ended up blocking him. Then he followed me from another page, and I blocked that one. Then he followed me from like a government page, and I'm like, oh my Lord. So you got to know it gets a little crazy. But, I try to have fun with it. I had somebody get their feelings hurt the other day. I put in the post of the personal trainer video that people always think that's my mom. I'm like, this is not my mother. And then the guy at the bottom said, I heard a rumor that's his wife. And I'm like, you heard incorrectly. He said, well, I said, he said, it's my understanding. I said, well, you understand incorrectly. And his response was, well, I said, I understand, laugh out loud. I said, well, then your understanding is just as bad as your reading comprehension. And again, I'm playing, right? This guy loses it. And I just respond, I was like, bro, I'm going to play the heel when I get to have the opportunity. And he laughed it off, and it was no big deal. But, you know, we have, I try to bring joy to it. I try to have fun. It's not all so serious. But, you know, every day we're posting something new, and we do have t-shirts on Pro Wrestling Tees, and, you know, there's stuff that we sell, and there's through Mattel and WWE, but that's not why we do it. You know, it helps pay the taxes, you know, but, you know, I always tell people,
you said Pro Wrestling Tees?
That shirt is so dope. And I'm like, man, when y'all buy them, it only covers me buying my shirts, right? Like it's not for profit, I assure you. And I don't care how much work you do. Yeah. You know, unless WWE puts their name behind it, then it's a little difficult, but those are all the places to find us. You know, I'm Travis Orndorff. You can find me as well. And we you know, this is a journey. Life is a journey we're doing together. There's so many things that we think separate us, and then when we speak, we find out more makes us in common, because nobody relates to my success or the perceived success, but you will relate to my failures. And so I always want to be a person that knowing what I went through to get to this place of peace and gratitude and love, like I know what I've come to believe, and I'm never going to tell people what to believe, but I can tell you what works for me. And so if these interactions open up that door and I can be a conduit, then I'm happy to do so.
That's a bar right there. Mic drop moment. Nothing else needs to be said, fellas. For my man, Sinista1, my guys from Bury the Booking Podcast, Dale and Dev, I'm your boy Lito. This has been Turnbuckles and Spilt Podcast, and we are out. Peace.
No game sense.
Cool.
Every angle hitting me in vantage points, so I can't abandon joints. Gotta grab the coins, pay me wickedly. Superman of Thor, who am I? Haters mimic me, and they fans cheer him on with their capabilities. Wow, double entendre, crazy lyrically. Had to read a page in Timothy to take you seriously, cause I ain't scared, I ain't got no fear, baby, get with me. Open doors for the people, you can say it's chivalry. I drop bombs, it'll be a day in infamy, mainly cause all my ops feeling painful instantly. Stay for sympathy, not me, creating imagery that everybody you like I made a simile. Facts.